Welcome everybody to a new analysis of Tradomics. My name is Dario, and in this episode we're gonna go through six interesting corporations regarding the industry of the green energy. Compared to the last video that I issued, I also added a new one, a new company which is called Bloom Energy. So we are in the field of hydrogen, and we're gonna have a look pretty soon at its chart. Before starting this presentation, as always, I remind you that if you want to get notified as soon as possible regarding our videos that are talking about um, stocks analysis from a time perspective, you can subscribe to our channel to get notified as soon as possible, as time is money. And if you want to actually also to support our daily job, you can put a like on the videos, and you recommend the videos also to your friends, or the people you know who have an interest in the stocks that we analyze on a regular basis. If there are stocks that are not appearing in the videos that we regularly update, then you can write to Tradomica at gmail.com to have an ad-hoc analysis intraday, multi-day, and you can find out our prices through the email addresses. So having said that, let's start with Enphase Energy. So compared to the last video, I updated a little bit the framing of the upward cycles here, because we said that from this top we could have added a T plus 5, but we have added T plus 6 also from the 2022 and 2023, which ended here and was not possible to divide it in two different yearly upward cycles. So therefore, from this top, we have the T plus 6, and therefore we do not expect in the first quarter of 2025 at least to return back to the stops as it was previously mentioned, because the market revealed to us additional information, and therefore from this top here, as you can see quite clearly, we have started a multi-year upward cycle that pushed the price towards the low at 59.57 $58.33 as for the candle of 18th of November 2024. Okay, so this is the first thing that I changed. And the second thing is we left intentionally the arrows in the last video just to describe what we were expecting. So we were expecting exactly this move to close a T plus 2 upward cycle. And actually from this top here to this top here, we have at 35 bars. So as usual, we can update the chart. So rather than a T plus 1 here, we have at a T plus 2 upward cycle. Okay, so here we can put the upward cycle here. And this T plus 2 monthly upward cycle with a duration between 24 and 44 days ended on this top. Okay, so now from this top here, we can expect another T plus 2 or something more than a T plus 2. If we take the total duration, so first a T plus 1, then a T plus 2, this T plus 3 um, has made a duration of 51 days. So potentially from this top here, we might have not just a T plus 2, but also eventually a T plus 3, or if we take the total duration from the top on made on the 12th of June 2024, we can also start eventually a T plus 4, because we have a duration of 101 days, and a T plus 4 can have a duration between 94 and 168 days, considering a standard duration and not an hybrid cycle. Okay, so for the time being, considering that we have had a total amount of um, 17 candles below this top, here we can consider this as the beginning of a T plus 3. Okay, we don't have the duration, enough duration to say this is a T plus 4, because to have a T plus 4 duration, we need at least 24 bars below this top. And this is not the case yet. Okay, so on the short term, the analysis was correct. We were actually foreseeing this move. And the second thing that I was highlighting was also, so let's clear the chart now, was also mm, the was also this low, and um, we were putting a T plus dots here on this low to understand whether from this low there was the possibility to begin eventually a T plus 5 or not. This was not the case because after a total duration of 9 bars, this cycle turned into a negative one. And considering now that we have had a push from this low, which went over this swing, okay, on the 14th of November. So this first impulse went over this candle. Now from this low, we can consider the beginning of a new cycle, and therefore we can update the chart like this. So from this low, we can have potentially the beginning of something that might be more than a T plus 1, T plus 2. And from this low, considering that we have had a total duration of 18 bars, we can consider this as a T plus 1. Okay, so you have always to think about the Matryoshka effect, so in which there are wider cycle encompassing shorter cycles. Also, in this case, from this low to here, we have had potentially the closing of a T plus 4, so 97 bars. So here we need to see to what extent this push to the high side will further push the price, whether they will reach this top, for example, as a first important target at $89.95, or whether they will floating towards the area of 70 to $80. But here we can start considering this as a T plus 4, okay? So we can update the chart. And if we do the right calculation here, um, we can also say that this can be considered T plus 4, and because the first T plus 4 from here had a duration of 159 days, which is encompassed between 94 and 168. And the second one was definitely shorter, as we said. So that was 97 bars. So we have now a structure of a T plus 5 yearly cycle divided in a first 6 months downward cycle and a second 6 months downward cycle. The first one has been positive because the end in which the cycle was completed was higher compared to the low from which it started. But the second one, as you can see, is negative because the low from which it started was higher compared to the low in which it ended. Okay, so therefore here we can have a termination of the T plus 5 potentially, because now we have a more than enough duration to say this is a median duration actually of a T plus 5. Having said that, you'd always have to bear in mind that T plus 5 can last until 338 days. So this is a median duration. But we have still time to do what? We have still time to start a new T plus 3, T plus 4, whatever downward cycle, and then return to the absolute lows in order to extend the duration of this T plus 5 and have more days that can be encompassed in this cycle. Okay, so we are not yet on the safe side because the time that the funds or HFT, high frequency trading, the time that I can use can still be enough to proceed to the downside. And what is important now from here is to monitor the strength of this impulse. And the first target to say that from here we'll start a new at least a T plus 3 or T plus 4 is this one at $89.95. Okay, so a lot of information, of course. If you are not familiar with this technique, I suggest you to go to the introduction to the T-cycle analysis to have a better understanding of what we are talking about. On the short term, what I can say on Enphase Energy is that here we are about to complete weekly upward cycle. The weekly upward cycle now is positive and has reached a total duration of 9 days. So we can still have another day to the upside, or eventually 2 days if we consider an hybrid cycle. And then what we can expect from eventually Tuesday onwards is to have a bit of retracement, okay? Because time will be running out, and we will have also the minimum of sufficient condition to close a T+1. So this retracement can last at least for 2-3 days, okay? And on the same as the other flip of the coin, we will have also the closing eventually of a T+1, because now we have reached a duration of 7 days. But with in the next week, a little bit of the move to the upside eventually, and then retracement for other 2 to 3 days will allow also the closing of a T+1 downward cycle, okay? So that's what can happen statistically speaking. This is the most probable way for the next week. Be also aware that from this top to here we have at 118 days. So I would expect in the next weeks slash month of December a beginning of let's say a short-term uptrend, because we will have enough time to do what? To eventually close a T+4. Okay, either a T+4 or first T+3, second T+3, and eventually third T+3. Okay, this let's say this thing, this assumption will be in place if we will not go back to this low. Okay, because if the price will start going back to this low, then as I said before, we will have more time to proceed to the downtrend. But as far as the low, this low will not be broken up, then we can have in the next week a little bit more push toward the upside, and eventually start closing this gap. Okay. So we will monitor over the next weeks that moves, but over the short term, this is the most probable way that I can foresee, according to our methodology, the trend of the price. So let's move to the next one. The second stock in focus is First Solar. So according to the last video, we were expecting this hook up, and this hook up I also updated here. The framing was done after a total duration of 26 bars. So after 26 bars, we have had the beginning of a new T+2 upward cycle. And now here we have, or let's say from the 1st of November, we have had pushed back to the downside. Okay, so from a downward cycle perspective, this T+2 ended here after 36 bars, and after that there was something quite exceptional here. It's a T-1 Bayer tongue. That's how I would interpret this thing. Because that cycle was basically taking 5 days. So 5 days can be is a T-1, and can be encompassed between a T+2 and another T+2. Okay, so that's my interpretation, which is of course in line with the method. Now the thing is that we have to closely monitor this low. We have to closely monitor this low, because from this one made on the 5th of August, potentially we have a T+4, and this T+4 is already negative, and therefore we can have this first negative T+3, because it's a T+2 plus another T+2, and the duration is now at 66 days. So from this low we can have a T+3, But if we will not start going back to this top, then we might have a situation in which the price can float, it can go sideways, and then can potentially return to the absolute lows. Okay, and this thing, this new cycle ongoing, can be, of course, part of this T+4. And therefore here we will have the enough time for the T+4 to close the cycle lower to this point at $173.37. This will allow also eventually the closing of a T+5. So here you have to be really aware that we might have a situation of this kind. What can change this focus is that if we start returning back to the stop, okay, at $221.20, here we will have the beginning of a T+3 or even something more. And this one we can consider rather than a T+4, a T+3, okay? So also in this case, we have eventually, let's say from a time perspective, yes, of course, all the necessary and sufficient condition to close the cycle, because here we have 248 days. But in order to demonstrate that from this low we have something new like a T+5, we have to first of all break up this low. Okay, so this is the swing of control and to the upside, and this is the swing of control to the downside. At the moment, there are no particular indications. So because the price in the last weeks was basically walking through price area between $200 and $180. So let's wait eventually new impulses to the upside or to the downside. The first swing short term of control for an upside is this one at $203.99, and eventually to the downside is this low at $181.83. Okay, so that's the situation we have on First Solar. In this case, we have to wait the next weeks to have more information. But you know now all the checkpoints, thanks to this analysis, to better position yourself for longer shorts. On Nextera Energy, in the last video, we were saying that we could have expected more downtrend because this cycle turned into a negative one. And this cycle can be a T+1 or T+2 or even a T+3, because here we have enough bar to say that this can be even a T+3. Okay, so we have had downtrend as expected. This downtrend has finished here on this low after 20 bars. So therefore, this is a T+1 cycle. So here we can update the chart. But now you have to be really aware of the following situation. So the situation is that we have now from an upward cycle perspective, 39 bars out of 44. So therefore here we don't have too much time to proceed to the upside, just 4 days. So by mid of next week, if they wanted to really stretch the time until the maximum, we can see again uptrend, but then be aware that a new T+2 will start. And therefore, if a new T+2 will start, then we can expect retracement. Now here we have to see whether this retracement will go lower this low, okay, or whether this low will be safeguarded. Because in this case, if the price will break up this low, then we could have a T+1, another T+1, and then complete this cycle. Otherwise, from this low, if this low will not broken up, then we have to reconsider this as T+1 rather than a T+2, T+3. Okay, but it's also good to to flag you that this potentially is a T plus 2, T plus 3, because then the situation is might really turn into a downtrend, and therefore you have to be aware that carefulness here is recommended. Also, because from this top we might have not just a T plus 4 but even a T plus 5, and therefore with a T plus 5 we can expect several days below the stop and further push to the downtrend, okay, or to the downside. So here what we can say is that we can update the chart by having eventually here the beginning of a T plus 2. I put a question mark because this is something that we haven't seen yet, but what we can expect. At least you know that time now for the uptrend is going towards the end, and then we can expect a bit of a downtrend, and we have to monitor carefully the downtrend, especially its strength, and whether this downtrend will be, as I said, something either like this or eventually like this. Okay, so that's what I can say regarding Nextera Energy. Another thing is that time from this T plus 5 until here is 273 bars. So here we have eventually enough time to start something like a T plus 5, a new T plus 5. So if they want to really do this thing or this negative cycle, they have time for another 60 days. So this move can happen until beginning of February. Let's see if I've done the right calculation. 336 or 338 days. Yes. So this move can last so up and down until 10 of February. Okay. So there is still time to do whatever they want, either to start a new T plus 5 or to return back to the lows. But if this is a T plus 2, T plus 3 negative cycle, then be aware that we might expect something like this, okay? But in the short term, just 4 days next week, eventually to proceed to the uptrend and then retracement. So this is it, and let's move to the next one. On Brookfield Energy, as for last analysis, we were saying that either this low or this low could have been potentially the beginning of a T plus 2. Now, we, after the analysis, we have seen actually completed this cycle, and the low that was achieved, the lowest low achieved was the candle of 19th of November 2024. Therefore, considering the time elapsed, I would tend to consider um, this as the T plus 2 43 bars. So basically the T plus 2 began here on this low on the 18th of September. So now we can update the chart, putting the T plus 2 on this low rather than the other one. And if we now make all the calculations, we can see that from this low signed on the 5th of August 2024, we have had the first T plus 2 positive downward cycle lasted 32 bars, and then the second one, as said, 43 bars. Okay, so this low, this is 44, but if we take the right candles, is 43, because this one, the first one, 18th of November, is the beginning of the new cycle. So this low now can be considered the beginning of a new cycle. So beginning of a new cycle means that at the moment we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bars over this low. Therefore, this can be considered already a T plus 2, because we have a SIP cycle of 2 degrees less, which is a weekly cycle that has an amount of candle, which is 7, which is more than 6, to begin a T plus 2. So every cycle needs to have a SIP cycle 2 degrees less over or below a certain top or a certain low in order to begin the cycle itself. Okay, so here we have at least a T plus 2, but we can have eventually the beginning of something even bigger than a T plus 2, because considering the beginning of the T plus 3, which was done with this candle on the 2nd of August until the candle of the 18th of November, we have 75 bars. So basically, we have also completed a T plus 3. Namely in the first T plus 2 and the second T plus 2, but also here we have potentially also the completion of a T plus 4, and this T plus 4 has lasted 151 bars. So basically here we have not so much room to eventually continue this T plus 4, so I would tend to consider this low as the beginning of something that is more a T plus 2. So T plus 3, T plus 4. This means that why this is important? It's important because we have to understand also the upward cycles. And given that here potentially we have already a T plus 5 yearly upward cycle that is positive, the expectation is basically to return to the absolute tops, okay? Because given that now this T plus 5 is positive, therefore the extension of its duration, which is between 193 and 38 days, can just go towards the upside, so as an uptrend. So the high or the top was broken after 101 bars. This means that the return to the absolute tops from that from the beginning of that T plus 5 can um, can happen within 190 days. So by end of February, even beyond, so Q2, Q3 2025. So there is time until February 2025 first to return to $28.41 and then extend also the gains, which means that from the level that we have today, um, on according to this analysis, so if we take this level until the top, we have potentially another 12%, 12.24% gain, and even beyond. Okay, so that is how I would read the chart of Brookfield Renewable. So at the moment, mostly on the short term, I would expect the development of the T plus 2 upward cycle here. Okay, we have reached a duration that is now at 27 bars, so minimum duration is already there, but we can extend the duration until a median duration, which is 32 up to 44 bars. So for the next week, there is more probabilities to go to the uptrend rather than the downtrend, even if bear in mind that we have already the minimum time to have a T plus 2. So if they want also next week, they can start having a retracement. But considering that here we have a T plus 2 or even more than a T plus 2. And here as an upward cycle, we have or just the minimum duration. For the next week, I would tend to leave the arrow like this, so to have more possibilities to the uptrend rather than the downtrend. Of course, we have the first resistance here already for today, which is at around 20. This is $26.57. This is the moving average 50. But once we break up this resistance, then the second level is at $27 or target price. Okay, just this is mostly on the over the short term. So having said that, let's move to the next one. On Clearway Energy, another analysis correct. So here we were forcing this hook towards the upside to develop a T plus 2. According to the last video that we issued, we were saying that from this low we were expecting a new weekly cycle. Here we go, and this weekly cycle was a negative downward cycle. The total duration of this cycle has been of 6 days, and from this low here we have had the beginning of a new cycle. So from this low here potentially we have the beginning of a T plus, at least this is a T plus 3. It might be even something more, because you see already that there are several candles over this low, and potentially from this low we might have the beginning of a T plus 5 even, because the total duration that we have now until the date of the 5th of November 2024 is 274 bars. So therefore here we might have the beginning of a T plus 5. T plus 5 yearly downward cycle. In this case, the upward cycle, yearly upward cycle that was done last year, so 27th of December, is a positive one. Therefore, here we can expect the return at least to the stop at $30.92. Okay, so here you see on in this channel that there are so many insights, but especially competitive advantages over technical analysis, wave analysis, and so on, that we can forecast the duration of certain cycles or different degrees of cycle. And we already know that we can return, or we will return back to some tops. So therefore you can manage your position accordingly, either to the short size or to the long side. And in this case, because there was this T plus 5 that turned into positive after just 5 months from its beginning. So here we were already from May aware that the trend could have been to the upside, at least for the minimum up to the maximum duration of a T plus 5. Okay, so at the moment with this T plus 5 here, with at the top we have reached 191 bars. So 191 bars is true that it's a T plus 5 already with its minimum duration, but given that we have had already um, recovered more than 78% of this Fibonacci retracement, the idea is to go back to this top, or to back to this swing. Also because from this low we can foresee a T plus 5. Okay, so it's true minimum duration achieved, but it seems here that we are that the destiny of Clearway Energy is at least to return back to $30.92 and even go beyond. Um, Another thing that is supporting this analysis is also the fact that here we have completed a T plus 2. So here we can basically update the chart, and this T plus 2 has turned into a positive one. Okay, so therefore now we have a duration that is at um, 19 bars. So here the expectation is really to proceed to the upside at least for 24 bars, which means for the entire next week. Okay, so here the situation is pretty clear. So we can continue to the uptrend, and the target in focus is 30. Is this at 30? This candle at $30.92. Okay, so here I leave this arrow in green. So let's move to the last one, which is our new entry. And last stock is for those who have uh, a bit of stomach or a tolerance to high variation of the price. So let's move to the new one. So the last company in focus is called Bloom Energy. So Bloom Energy is an American public company headquartered in San Jose, California, and it manufactures and markets solid oxide fuel cells that produce electricity on site. So this is a company that was founded in 2001. And here I propose the chart according to our methodology. So here I showed you the last 3 years of the stocks trend, and from this top here that was done on the 8th of November 2021, we have at the beginning of a yearly upward cycle. From this low here on the 12th of May 2022, we have at the beginning of a T plus 6, which is a 2 years downward cycle. So focusing firstly on the downward cycle, we have had the first T plus 5 downward cycle that was pretty neutral. And then we have had another T plus 5 downward cycle that was negative. So you can always check the durations. In this case, the first T plus 5 was made of 250 bars or 250 days. And the second one was with a total duration of 194 days, so pretty short one. What is interesting about this company is that after this first T plus 4 downward cycle, um, which is basically this cycle, we have had a really harsh push to the upside. I'm not gonna investigate that's why it happened, because you can basically read a lot of articles regarding why and fundamentals and whatever. I mean, I as for those of you that are familiar with this channel, I'm not considering why something has happened, but I'm considering what brings with something that moved the price to the upside or to the downside. And I try to predict what is going to happen rather than what has happened. Because what is important to investor or short-term traders or short-term investor is, am I going to make money in the next weeks or in the next months? So that's the thing that we always need to answer, independently on what has happened regarding if it were for an earnings release, or if it were for specific news. Okay, and as you can see here, based on earnings release that were, let's say, lower compared to the estimations or lower compared to the forecast of the analysts, we have had a harsh push to the upside that can be quantified in, if we take the absolute low to the absolute high, 216%. 216%. So this is for people that want to have a little bit of fun by speculating on the stocks. But of course, if you have move to the upside, you can have also harsh move to the downside. Okay, so here money management rules must be applied uh, in a really rigorous way. Okay. Having said that, what is interesting about this company is from a chart perspective is the following. So if we consider the upward cycle, the first upward cycle here was a negative one, because the top from which it ended was lower compared to the top from which it started, and the total duration was 310 days. The second yearly upward cycle has been divided in the first 6 months upward cycle, second 6 months upward cycle, and third 6 months upward cycle, all of them T plus 4. And the total duration has been of 325 days. Okay, so until the maximum duration, or mostly maximum duration. Now, from this low, we have evidence of a new T plus 5. We have had here enough bar to say this is a top and this is a nearly upward cycle. But thanks to this huge climb to the upside, we broke up the top from which the T plus 5 started after 131 bars. This means that until at least 190 bars, then the price is supposed to continue rallying to the upside. Okay, 190 bars is the minimum for which the rally can proceed. So therefore, we have a duration until the 25th of February 2025. If we're gonna extend the duration to a median duration, which is generally the duration where the cycles can last, according to the Gaussian distribution. So consider a normal distribution, we have roughly 250 days. So here we can estimate also that the rally can continue until the 20th of May 2025. Okay, and that's how the situation looks like at the moment. So interesting setup for this company that in the last 3 years as just was just pushed to the downside. So it was basically coming from a extensive downtrend. Now, over the short term, we have to focus more on the shorter cycle to estimate retracement. So now here we have 131 bars. This means that we have more than enough time to close a T plus 4 upward cycle. So considering that the downward cycle has begun here, T plus 4, this is not an upward cycle, but it's just a downward cycle. Now we might expect to do what? To close this T plus 4, have a retracement, to start either a T plus 2 or T plus 3 or eventually another T plus 4, and then return back to the tops. Okay, so now time is a little bit stretched, even if we still have 20 days to proceed to the upside, like L. Even here we are in an overbought situation. Okay, so now it's we are a bit stretched to eventually open long position, even if as far as there are volumes, this indicator can give us just some clue regarding what can happen, but we can continue to an oversold situation for many other days if they want. But still, we are really high. So we are really high. So, and time is we have 20 days more or 30 days more actually to proceed to the uptrend, but then the rest is on the downtrend. So statistically speaking, you can make the calculation, but with a close estimation, we have a little bit more possibility to the downside rather than the upside. Okay, it's close to 50-50, but I would tend to consider a little bit more possibilities to the downside than to the upside. And in order to do this calculation, you have to subtract 168 minus 94, and then consider that now we are 131. Then you have to, we are mostly in the mid, so it's a little bit 50-50. Okay, statistically speaking. So we can continue a little bit more, but we are in overbought situation. Retracement, but then the tendency is to further proceed to the tops and continue the rally. And the target here in focus would be this one at $31.47, and subsequently will be at $37.01. So this is all. Hope this video has given you a lot of valuable insights. If you wanted to subscribe to our channel or or comment, feel free to write and to subscribe. And a like is always warmly welcome for the job that we are doing here at Tradomics. Thanks for watching, and see you to the next episode.